Welcome back to the next lesson. We are approaching the last lesson very soon, and today we're going to conclude the last two factors in token design, which are financial incentives as well as architecture. So let's jump forward. Once again, hi, I'm Lisa, and I've been doing research for almost 2 years now. What I've been doing is to conclude everything that I've been doing research about, which are all the basic fundamentals of economic fundamentals, and applying that to your token business model and your token ecosystem. So how do you do that? How do we understand? How do we apply? This is everything that the class is going to be for. So I really like efficiency, so let's get started. So I'm going to make this smaller for now. And today we're going to talk about financial incentives, understand how to apply it in business applications. Then we're going to talk a little bit. Then we're going to talk about architecture, the business application, as well as what are the different types of property rights, and this new idea that I'm playing around with of how do you combine all the different kind of things that we have covered to create a new business model specific to the objectives that you want. So this is kind of a hypothetical case. So I think it's quite interesting to really sum up what we have done so far and take all the different kind of elements that we have covered in token design. So by the end of this, you should understand what are the on-chain financial features for participants, new creative token design models, new funding mechanisms, as well as new property rights model for digital tokens. Okay, so let's get started with financial incentives. So once again, this is the conclusion this is the framework that we've been talking about. In market design, we talked about design of the environment. In mechanism design, we talked about design of the rules of the game. Now we're talking about token design, and specifically today we're going to talk about financial incentives. We're going to look at platform activities as well as the kind of transaction fees and the returns of your stake, returns of investment, as well as in architecture we're going to look at property rights as well as distribution. So before I start, I want to just share this point again because I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. The point of creating a token, we're talking about token design, we're talking about token engineering. Token exists as the main incentive driver to push the network, or to drive the network towards a shared objective. Because all the participants are decentralized. Everyone is everywhere, it's very scattered. You need to coordinate all these activities, and you need to coordinate for a purpose, which is a shared objective. And that's what token is for. Tokens have other use cases like getting value on the secondary market, looking at getting returns of your external returns of investment, or you do trading or whatever you do. It's possible. It's just a secondary market. It's just not what we are talking about here. Right now, we're looking at token as a way to coordinate activities, coordinate people's actions together, and go towards a shared objective. So we have that out of the way now. Let me open this again. And what do we mean by platform activities? Platform activities, these platforms exist to coordinate all the activities together, and financial incentives help to do that coordination because people are incentivized by a lot of different things, and one of the commonality is money. It's financial, economical financial kind of gains. So this is something we want to use. We want to use the fact that people are incentivized by money or incentivized by financial gains. We can design them into our system. Another important thing is we want to ensure that people are transacting on the platform instead of transacting off-chain, instead of transacting outside of the platform. We want activities to be done on the platform. And if you remember, we talked about, okay, this needs to be small. And we talked about that in market design, the pillar of market design, and specifically the factor in safety. We want people to feel safe enough to be transacting on the ecosystem. We want them to feel safe as in security, safety, but we also want people to feel safe as in their preferences are being met, their values being met, their desire is being met on the platform itself. So that is part of market design, as in we're designing the environment for that. But specifically for the tokens itself, we want to make sure that they transact on the platform. The other thing that we are looking at is also the returns the potential returns to equity owned. So sometimes you can't really define that, okay, if you have an equity, I can 100% give you returns owned, because that will, sometimes you can guarantee that, but you can't always guarantee that, so I use the word potential. So the difference here is that we're adding the time factor T, or time factor. That means looking in the future, what are the potential gains? So it's still on the platform, but instead of the moment now, we're looking into the future of what the returns will be in the future, what the platform will look like, and how would that be a financial incentive for me to own the tokens, or for me to use the tokens, or for me to want the tokens. So we're incentivizing people through a promise, not a guarantee, but a promise of a potential future returns. It's kind of like staking, the different variations of staking, and this is something like having shares or having equities to a company. You have benefits of financial incentives for owning the shares now. It could be maybe a current dividends for now, and in the future you see that if you see that the company is going to rise in value, and then your equity also increases in value. So this could be something that can be engineered into your token depending on your objectives, depending on your token function. So if you recall something familiar, we talked about this in the mechanism design pillar. So we want honest interaction. Oh, we want token curated registry. So the thing is a bit off. So token curated registry, and one of the financial incentives for token curated registries is to have potential returns on the equity owned. So you can see that right now, just trying to consolidate all these things that we have learned so far, and just trying to firm up a picture of what they look like together. So what about the business application? So the things about platform activities could be stuff like transaction fees, rewards for joining the network, discount tokens, referral links, and different kind of reward policies. So for transaction fees, this is quite a common thing. This is one of the reasons to incentivize people to continue staying on the platform. And it can be through staking, it can be by being a miner or a validator, or being part of this ecosystem. You get to earn transaction fees, and you also get to pay transaction fees. Sometimes people look at transaction fees as a form of taxation. So the ecosystem will continue to generate, you have to pay additional fees to do something. Transaction fees, like to transact, you need to pay a fee. And that is kind of like taxes that government gets from people. And then government will keep the taxes and redistribute it to whoever needs it in the ecosystem, in the country. So in the same vein, ecosystems can also do that, or your business can also do that, where you keep the transaction fees all together and you figure out how to distribute that. How do you distribute that is something that's going to be very important. We're going to talk about that in architecture. But basically, right now we're talking about collecting transaction fees, what can they be for, and what are the incentives for transaction fees. The other one is rewards for joining the network. We talked about that in market design as well, as in trying to create thickness in the market. So you get rewarded for joining, and for referral links, you get reward for asking someone else to join. So you're already in the system, you get more people to join, helps with thickness, helps with market design, and you're rewarded. And for a new person that on board, they are also rewarded for joining. So it all helps with thickness. So these two things are part of market design. And discount tokens. So discount tokens, we're going to talk about that in the last lesson after this. And discount tokens, basically, it gives you the right to receive discounts. It's kind of like gift cards. It's kind of like, your frequent flyer points. It's kind of like coupons where you get discount on items. But the main difference is that it's not burnt when you use it. You can hold on to the tokens all the time and just keep using to get discounts. The tokens can also be sold so you can gain in two ways. The incentive is in two ways. The first one is getting discounts on the items that you purchase, on the services that you purchase, and the things that you want that the ecosystem provides. And the second one is when the tokens rise in value, you can sell them. Maybe because you don't want to get discounts anymore, you can sell them. So these are incentives. and just other kind of reward policies or reward mechanisms that in general that's just beyond mining. Because right now a lot of platform activities, or we look at base layer blockchain, it's more of when you mine you get rewarded in terms of block rewards, but there are a lot of other kind of incentives available. When we talk about equities owned, we talk about returns to investment. So the expected returns to the equity owned, this can be by staking. So when you stake in your token or you lock your tokens up, then maybe you can gain in some transaction fees, and that's expected returns in a future period. Or it could be a change in the underlying asset. So that could be it could be on some like decentralized finance product, or maybe gold just increased in price, and instead of buying gold, you just buy the token. That could also be the case, and that's also that's one of the safer bets, because we're just changing the physical product into a digitized version. So that's not crazy innovative business idea, but it exists, it works, that's good enough, you know. Okay, another one is arbitrage on exchange rates of token prices. You've got price level volatility of tokens, liquidity mechanisms, and riskiness of tokens. So in arbitrage, we're looking at arbitrage means the difference in buy and sell prices in different places. So I know that we have main exchanges, right? You've got like Coinbase, Kraken, and all the kind of big exchanges. They tell you the prices of Bitcoin, for example. So sometimes the prices are not always exactly the same. There's some differentiation, and you can make arbitrage, or you can make money out of that. But not only that, when we talk about returns to investment, we talk about a longer period. We talk about a future time period, and arbitrage can happen if you think a bit bigger picture, where your exchange rates of the tokens are just is just much better, and you can sell them in the next period for a better price, so better returns of investment. Look at price level volatility of tokens. So how volatile are the tokens, and which is also how risky the tokens are. So the price level is less volatile, and you feel safer, and you know, people want to join the ecosystem more, and that could be a way to measure your returns. Same with riskiness. With riskiness, we also want to consider what happens during crisis period. Maybe the the token is very risky, and anything happens in the real world, suddenly everyone just takes all their tokens away, and or everyone just liquidates their tokens, and suddenly the token has zero value. So that's also something to consider. You want to make sure that the tokens are not too risky, and that's why we talk about price level volatility. And lastly, we have liquidity mechanisms. So sure, we can have a lot of these beautiful engineering features of a token, but if your tokens can't be liquidated, as in your tokens can't be changed out to fiat or to cash or to something more user-friendly, then that's going to be quite a risk. It's going to be quite difficult to get your returns of the kind of money that you put into this token. So that's for business application, that's for financial incentives. Let's move on to architecture. Architecture is really the design or the structure, the building blocks of the tokens. It's like ice cream, you know, you have different kind of building blocks, different components to make up the entire ice cream cone. So when we talk about architecture of the token, we're looking more specifically at the tokens. How are they structured? What are the components or the building blocks that make up to tokens? And we are looking at different things like property rights, like identity, like distribution model, and your different algorithms and code. So tokens, we can look at tokens as a whole, as in the structure of tokens in a macro view, like everything together. We'll also look at tokens in a micro view, as in the specific token, depending on the function, depending on its purpose, the objective of the token, what are the building blocks that makes up this token. So let's start with property rights. When we talk about property rights, we're talking about 4 different things. Or property rights includes 4 different things. We've got bargaining power, ownership, identity, and the rights of the property. So when we talk about bargaining power, it's the rights to negotiate or to participate in decision making. So these are property rights that are available for you to pick and choose and add into your token. And these are design features to put into your tokens. Ownership will be ownership rights to holding the token. So remember I talked about how some items are physical, they're just physical products, and tokens are just the digital versions of them. It could be a bar of gold, and tokens, you buy one token, it represents the bar of gold. So you have ownership rights to that bar of gold, and that bar of gold will have your Ethereum address on it to show that you own that. So that's a specific kind of property right. You have rights to own the token, that gold bar. So if you go into the gold vault in London and you go and tell them that this is my Ethereum address, I want to look at my gold, show it to me, and you can actually do that because it's a right, because you own it. It's ownership rights. The other one is identity. When we talk about identity, we're talking about two types of identity: the identity of the token itself and the identity of the holder. So when we talk about token itself, it really represents the underlying asset. It's similar to ownership, but it's more of, instead of rights to own, it's your identity. It's the identity of this token. It's like what's your name? My name is Lisa, and that's my identity. So that's part of property rights, because we need to put the rights to an identity. So we're looking at identity of the token itself, and then we're also looking at identity of the holder. Some projects don't have that because you just don't need that. And we're also looking at, maybe an anonymous kind of or pseudonymous kind of ecosystems that you don't really want to give out your name to strangers or to a shared database. So that might not be something interesting. But if we're looking at, a very high level kind of government implemented blockchain where we want to give identity to people and then assign different rights to them by having identity on blockchain, then that could be something that we're going to talk about. Then we're looking at, specific kind of tokens that hold identity of people. Then the kind of design structure of this token will be vastly different. We're talking about security, we're talking about encryption, we're making sure to what extent identity is on available, and to what extent can someone else access the identity. So maybe the identity can have a very, very big layer. The first one is just, name and name. And anyone, it's easier to access that. I can also give access to that very easily. And then you can have more details like birthday, passport number, country's identification number, address, which is a bit more, sensitive. You don't want to share that. And then you can have, even more identity like health records and everything. And the structure of this token it's going to be very different already, especially when we're talking about, let's say, okay, now this identity will be pegged to, or will be used by the database of a hospital. So next time when you go into the hospital, they can just ask for your name, and then the database will search all your information on blockchain and to get your information. Of course, with your permission and everything, then they can get your information and just check you in or register you in as a patient. So this structure will be very different. Also, it gives different kind of access to different database. So the structure of token will be very different compared to, for example, the structure of a token, the identity of a token. The identity of this specific token is to make sure to show that it represents this specific gold bar. And that's it. It could be a very simple token that has this link between token and gold bar, serial number, Ethereum address, that's it. So different kind of structures. And lastly, the rights that you own to access the property. So it can be rights to the tokens, rights to participate, rights of the token itself. So maybe the rights of the token can be, with this token, you can stick on specific kind of stuff. Maybe it's a whitelisted token, so you can stick in this staking pool. But if your token is blacklisted, then you can only stick in other kind of pools, staking pools. Or it can be rights of the token to vote, to participate. It's very different, and it's an important property. It's an important factor to consider because it changes the whole structure. Like I said, the different kind of structure, you add kind of all these variables into the design, the building block, like different kind of scoops of ice cream, and they are just the main foundational kind of ice cream flavors, but the entire ice cream will be very different based on what you want the token to have, what kind of rights you want the tokens to have. So we are going to look at the business application side of things. So in the architecture of tokens, we're going to look at how tokens can help to govern actions through property rights. And also when we have proper structure of tokens, when we show people, okay, these are the different building blocks that make up the token. This is very important because firstly, it's important in the design, and people know what goes in. And secondly, it makes it a lot easier to trust the token, to trust that, okay, this is how the token is designed because these are the building blocks, and then it's easier to find valuation for the tokens, or easier to define the valuation of the tokens. And something about trust is that it makes people feel a lot safer to want to transact with this token. And you transact with this token on chain. If you go back again, talk about market design, and we talk about safety in market design. This is one of the example. We're just kind of combining them together. So helping your brain to link them up. How token design is related to safety in market design. So we are looking at property rights. We talk about property rights just now. The rights to the token, or rights to identity, and the different building blocks that you can play around with in property rights. And then we're looking also at distribution structure. So property rights is the more micro view, the more specific, okay, this is the specific token, these are the building blocks of this token. And we also want to understand the structure of tokens in general, the macro view. So how your tokens will be distributed. It could be an initial distribution. So the macro view will be the initial distribution, and say that, okay, we have X number of tokens, 10% will go here, 20% there, 30% there, 40% here, and that will be the main structure. And then as you mint more tokens, how the tokens will be distributed. The other way of token distribution is the more micro view, which is every time a token is minted, how is it being distributed? Or when we talk about transaction fees just now, every time a new transaction happens and transaction fees are incurred, where do the transaction fees go? How are they being distributed? Is it distributed by the amount staked, or the other kind of duration staked, or the big players, or master nodes, or everyone gets to be distributed equally? So these are the kind of things that we want to consider. And lastly, we're also going to look at algorithm, the math, and code, because all these are just concepts, right? Are just design kind of variables that we want to implement into the token. But ultimately, the real test of whether these things are implemented is in the code, it's in the algorithm, it's in the mathematical formula. So that's something that we want to look at. So when we talk about property rights, we're looking at the economics of property rights, like the claim rights, ownership rights, rights to participate. So the economics of property rights. We are also looking at, this is a new taxation model called Harberger's taxation. It's by an Austrian economist, where his research is all about taxation. So he's looking at new forms of taxation. So now usually tax is being assessed. So tax can be 10%, and 10% based on a value that's defined by people. So a value that's defined by the property agent, a value that's defined by your company, so your income, and then your tax upon that, or value of an art piece when you pay for auction, and then you have to give them tax or something. So tax is usually calculated based on a price that's kind of set by the market forces. And now we're looking at a new form of taxation where we get to calculate tax based on a self-assessed value. So I feel that this is worth this amount, and I'm going to pay taxes based on it. And so this changes the concept of property rights a bit. We're going to look into that a little bit later. And it's a new innovative business model or new business idea to change the way we see taxation, or we see how to price items. And lastly, it's representation of identity and rights of their identity. And when we talk about identity, again, it could be a person, art, digital representation of something. So identity is really a general thing, and it could it could represent a lot of other types of identity, and then the rights that they hold or the thing holds. When we talk about distribution, we are looking at distribution at 2 stages. The first one is the initial stage. So we look at initial allocation, lockup period, amount locked up, what's the expectation of them entering the ecosystem. We are also going to look at conviction state inflation funding. So it's a new funding, continuous funding model. We're going to talk about that in the next session. And the other time period that we want to look at is just right after the initial phase. So between the initial phase and mass adoption, that period of it just understanding what the market is like. So we also want to look at, block time, block reward, minting new blocks, what is the reward, what is the time taken, so that we can understand the distribution of it. And token bonding curves, we talked about that last session, the minting and burning of new token supply. And lastly, we're going to look at a little bit of math and code. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in the next session. The next session is the last session, and it's going to be a little bit more math heavy. In fact, that's probably the first time I'm going to show you a lot more math. And we're going to understand, we're going to break tokens down into its code and understand why they're like that and what do they mean. So it really depends on the algorithm of the project. And something to be, something is very helpful is usually when it's peer reviewed, when the code for the token, the code of the token designer or the engineering aspect of the token is being audited and things are not taken for granted. So what I notice is that sometimes people just have an assumption that tokens, the model or the formula is just like that because someone else has done it, but no one else has verified or audited the base formula, but it's being applied and used in all sorts of ways. So that's something that you should not be taking for granted, and that's something that should be audited. And the most common math formulas used are logarithmic logs, log function, exponential functions, geometric series, as well as linear functions. We talked briefly about them in the last session, remember, with all the graphs and the moving graphs and how the shape changes and the graph moves up and down. So we use 4 of them: log, exponential, not geometric, but log, exponential, and linear functions. We also introduced 3D graphs, but right now for the token models, they're just primarily looking at 2D graphs. And we're going to go into the types of property rights. So lastly, we're going to talk about the type of property rights. So I have this nice little table summarized here. Okay, basically it's the types of properties, the explanation of what they are, the real world example, as well as the crypto world example. It gives you a very a quick overview of understanding what are the kind of property rights are available out there, what are the types of property rights, as well as the explanation. So then you understand, okay, these are the general classifications of property rights, and you know where your tokens kind of fit into. And this is just a general classification, okay? So first we have open access. So open access means it's owned by everyone gets access to. And the example will be the ocean or air or, yeah. I mean, climate change is a big problem. It's a big issue now. I'm not going to talk about that. But the ocean in general, it's owned by everyone. Everyone gets access to. You want to go to the beach, you can just go. If you want to swim from here to another country, if you can, then just go for it. You're not, everyone gets to own it. Everyone gets access to it. So in the crypto world, it's kind of like codes on GitHub, because we're talking about open source, right? Open source is similar to open access, where things are open. It's not exactly owned by everyone, but everyone gets access to it, the codes on GitHub. Some of them also have creative license to the codes, so you get to use the code, and you get to kind of not exactly own the code, but you can modify the code in the way that you want. So this is a very close example to the crypto world that I can think of. Public property. Public property It's where it's owned by all, but its use and access is controlled by a community. So it's not like a gatekeeping kind of control, but just that, if anything goes wrong, there's a little bit like someone taking care of the thing, the space. So for example, a park. Everyone gets to use the park, but if a park gets dirty or the park has a lot of litter or a tree falls down, who takes care of it? It's quite a challenge to rely on the good heart of the community to kind of clean that up. So usually you have like park rangers, or you have the government taking care of the parks, and they hire people to be cleaning the parks. So in the same vein, it'd be something like Ethereum blockchain. So everyone gets to go into Ethereum blockchain, and everyone gets to participate and be a miner, be a validator, be just a Ether holder, or you can be a developer that builds on Ethereum. Anyone can has access to it. So, but it's also, you kind of own it if you have if you have Ether. So you don't exactly own it, but you are part of the Ethereum blockchain network and ecosystem. But who takes care of it? You have the Ethereum Foundation, where people are constantly looking at how to improve Ethereum, how if we want to vote on Ethereum, do you want to hard fork on Ethereum, or if there's a hack, what happens? Are we going to hard fork into a new Ethereum chain, or what are we going to do? So it's not exactly controlled by Ethereum Foundation, but it's kind of managed, or it's kind of taken care of and looked after. The other one is common property. So it's owned by a group of individuals. So there'd be something like a board of directors or shareholders owning a company. They own the company, they have equities in the company, so they own the company. In the same vein, that will be something like a permission DLT. So it could be like R3 Corda, it could be Hyperledger, where the consortium owns that specific blockchain, or the consortium owns a specific distributed ledger. And so it means that you can't just enter because you want to, you feel like it. It's not like public property, but a common property between the consortiums, or between the partners. And lastly, it's private property, so it's owned by a specific individual or entity. So the Coca-Cola recipe, it's owned by a few people, but I don't really know if it's actually owned by Coca-Cola. I guess it should be, but it's a private property. I can't just Google and get Coca-Cola's recipe, the exact recipe. And in the crypto world, there will be your private key. So your private key, it's your private property, and please do not share it with anyone. It's just like your PIN code for your bank cards. So now let's talk a little bit more about harborless taxation that I shared just now. I show you what it means, and I show you how I'm bringing in some other aspects together. It's like building blocks to build up this new business model. So imagine you're an owner, and you play Pokemon Go, and like a Pokemon Go on blockchain, and you have Pikachu. So you want to sell Pikachu. So when you have Pikachu, you have to pay taxes on them. It's just a new model that you have to pay taxes, and this taxes is 10% of the cost or the price of Pikachu. So it's instead of taxes, think of it as a transaction fee based on the block value. So Pikachu is in a block, and for Pikachu's block to be validated to prove that you now own Pikachu, you have to pay 10% of the value of this block. And this 10% is the transaction fee, or this 10% is what we call taxes. So what I can do is, because harborless taxation is where I declare, it's a self-declaration of the price of the item, and then you pay taxes on that. So let's say I'm just using a random coin called the Economics Design Coin, EDC. It can be anything. So I declare that this owner, he caught Pikachu, and he wants to buy Pikachu. He wants to validate Pikachu to be in his pocket, and he says that, okay, I declare Pikachu is 10 coins. And the taxes that he pays will be 10%. So he has to pay one coin as the transaction fee. Now you're gonna think, oh, this is such a silly mechanism, right? It's not really very useful, because this owner can say that, okay, I declare Pikachu as 1 coin, and then I'll just pay 0.1 coin as my transaction fee. Then this is not a very good system. The system will drive everything to 0. Or he just says that, oh, I think Pikachu is worth less than 0, so I don't have to pay taxes at all. But here's the catch. So the first step is that he declares the value of Pikachu in this block. Now here's the catch. You have a different guy, a potential buyer, and he says, oh, I really love Pikachu, and I'm building a Pokemon deck, and I'm just missing Pikachu right now. So if I see Pikachu, I actually value Pikachu at higher price, at 11 coins. And when he sees that, okay, the owner says that, this guy says that Pikachu is worth 10 coins, and I value Pikachu at 11 coins, then now I have the right to buy this Pikachu in a block from the owner. So the owner declared it's 10 coins. The potential buyer thinks that it's worth more, so the potential buyer will give 10 coins to him because he says that it's 10 coins, and the potential buyer will pay the taxes instead. So this is where you have a list. Every time something wants to be transacted, the owner will write the declared value, and then anyone who thinks that the value is worth more will just pay the declared value to the owner. So this is good, because then the owner will not price it super low. The owner will not say that it's just 1 coin, because then someone else can just buy this from him at 1 coin. But if he thinks that this is valued more at 1 coin, and he receives 1 coin in exchange for Pikachu, it's not fair, right? You feel that, oh, why would I do that? That's a stupid move. So you won't do that. You also won't price it so high that a potential buyer will not buy it, because you have to pay taxes, remember? So then you will price the right value. And this mechanism, we call them self-governing mechanisms. So self-governing, because he will not price too high, he will not price too high, he also will not price too low. He will price just at the value that he thinks it is. Why? Because if this is being sold, he's compensated for the value, which is 10 coins. He's compensated for the value he thinks the item is worth. So this is a self-governing mechanism, and this is what Harburger's taxation is about. Now, what we want to do now is how we're going to put that in art or in digital assets. So let's make a very simple case study where what the objective of the artist creating the art is to continuously benefit from the art they create, and to ensure the art keeps changing hands. So firstly, he wants to continue benefiting from the art he creates. What does that mean? It means that when his art is transacted somewhere else, he continues to gain from it. And the second thing is he wants to make sure that art keeps changing hands. That means the art keeps getting sold. Why? Because this is a form of network effects for the artist. Because then, as more people get their hands on the art, as more people get to know about the art, people also get to know about the artist, and then that's basically network effects for the artist. People know more about him, people are more willing to buy his stuff. So this is the general gist of how it works, and then we'll go through the pictorial version of how it works, okay? So the artist creates an art, and artist A will sell the art to buyer B. He gets the profit. Very straightforward. So I'm an artist, I create an art, someone buys it from me, and I gain the profit. This is whatever that is in existence today. Now, B will always have to state a selling price. So maybe at every period, maybe every 2 weeks, he has to state the price that he values the art for. And he pays a monthly fee to keep it, like a very small amount, like 2%, or he sells the art to a different consumer, because the consumer thinks that, oh, I value the art more and I would want to buy it from you. So he either pays a small fee or it's being sold to a consumer. And then, so yeah, B either pays the fee or B keeps the profit. And when B transacts the art, a transaction fee is created, and the transaction fee will go back to A, artist. So transaction fees will always be given to artists. That's the general gist. Ooh. So that's the general gist. Let's understand how it works now. Okay, so this is how it works in digital art. We're talking about primary market. We talked about primary market last lesson as well. Primary and secondary market. Firstly, an artist creates art. So this is like a little egg, a little egg, and it will hatch, or it's just a fancy art in a block. Then he sells it to the buyer. He prices it at 15 coins, and buyer thinks that it's worth it. And so this should be 15 coins, yeah? So he sells it to the buyer, and the buyer will give the money the coins to the artist. So the artist just gains pure profit. That's the general market that exists anyway. Now, in the secondary market, when a buyer resells the art to someone else, so imagine a Picasso art, it's continuously being sold, and when it's being sold, every time it's being sold, who earns the money? The buyer earns the money, right? The buyer keeps the profits. But as an artist, as the main artist, the main dude that actually created the thing, don't you think he also deserves some rights to gain some rights to the kind of future profits that the art creates or the art will possess? So what can we do instead? Instead of giving instead of the buyer getting everything, all the profits, maybe we can bring the artist into the picture. How does that look like? So now we have the primary market and secondary market together. So primary market is just artist and buyer. Secondary market is the buyer and the rest of the world. So in the primary market, this is where the artist, the same thing, the artist creates, the artist sells to the buyer, and the buyer keeps the art. And now, because we have this new taxation method, the buyer has to continuously tell people that this is the price of art. The art is worth whatever amount. The art is valued at whatever amount to the buyer. And the buyer will then pay a small fee every month, or the small fee can be to the artist foundation, to a charity foundation, whatever. But this amount has to be paid every month, so that it mandates that the buyer has to state the price of the art. Now, a consumer comes along and says that, oh, I want to buy your art. So in the first period, artists create art. Art was sold at 15 coins. As the time goes, the buyer really, really loves this art, and the buyer says that, okay, I love this art so much. I value this art at 100 coins now, because I love it so much. Everyone keeps complimenting me. The status of the artist has also risen. So the artist is now like a Dali level, very high appreciated artist. So now the valuation I have for my art also increases, because the value of the artist also increased. So now I value the art at 100 coins. And someone says, well, I really love this artist too. I've been following him, and I think your egg valued at 100 coins is something that I want to buy. So he buys the 100 coin. He buys it for 100 coins. Now the difference is 75 coins, right? And so basically the buyer gets to keep 75 coins. But because now we introduce a new model where 10% of the transaction goes to the artist. So 10% of the transaction goes to the artist, and so 10 tokens will actually go to the artist, and every time the consumer continues to sell, every time there's a transaction, every time a transaction happens, the artist will always take 10%. And then the buyer will take the remaining difference, which is 100 minus, he makes 100 minus the initial 15, and then minus this 10% that was given away. So the buyer makes 75 coins. And this is a very, very small model of how Harburger's taxation can work in digital art. Or it doesn't even have to be art, it can be stuff like, when you have online games and you have weapons and like skins for your game and stuff like that, it can also work. So if you want, I would want you to think about how we can add token bonding costs into this. How can we add maybe kind of a personal token into this, or what other property rights can we give or can we add into this token model? So think about it, and if you have any ideas, just share it below because I have an idea, and then maybe we can discuss in the comments. So this is Harburger's taxation in digital art. And lastly, this is probably what you're looking for. The lecture notes is out. If you can scan the QR code, or you go to the link, I think you might have to sign into your Gmail or sign into email. I'm not very sure. I think the link might be a bit broken, but just go onto the link and email me if you have problems. The password for it is function, 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 and all small letters. And once again, I really appreciate honest feedback, how I can improve, how you think this can be better, what other things you want to learn. Was it fun? Did you hate it? Did you really think that was a waste of time, waste of money? Please let me know. I really, really would appreciate that, and you get 10% discount on your next purchase. And till then, I'll see you next time. Bye!